Welcome back to another episode of Pushing Back Chaos with me, Paul Mellon McFadden. In, well, in a happy place, about to go on vacation back to Oz, go see the family, catch up with my mum, Nana Chris, the head of the family, and my brothers and sister, and lots of loved ones and friends back in Melbourne. The kids are stoked. Everyone's super keen. There's lots of positive energy flowing around. It's one more day of work, and then I'm off. How are you going there, Tio? Good to see your smiling face, mate.
Yeah, I'm good, man. Like just a couple days off. Celebrated my birthday not too long ago, which was lovely. Had family over. Ate too much cake. Ate like a total fat body. But I guess it's good to do that from time to time.
It's
Yeah,
so
man.
funny
Just
that your
been.
birthday is 1st of April. It's just such a coincidence, the literal April Fool. For those of you out there, if anyone wants to send April Fool's birthday messages to Tio, just send them to the usual place. We'll make sure he gets them.
But yeah, man. It's been good though. Like March has been a pretty busy month for me. Just flying with work, and so I'm looking forward to this month, the next month, just kind of throttling back and getting a good chunk of time off.
Yeah, great
Just to,
man.
I mean, the weather's turning, so there's just more reason to be outside. I mean, we just had a brutal winter. Um, I mean, I haven't seen like driveway since like the second week of November. I mean, it's been out the last week or so, but just because the snow's receded a bit, but it's been fucking nonstop, man. I think we're all over it. I mean, it's like fuck you, Mother Nature. We get it. You could bring some snow. We get it. Get it. Not impressed. Go on.
Right. Oh, that's good that you got some clear skies coming and happy times. How about you there, Mike? What you doing, brother?
I'm still trying to figure out how Raph isn't more gray at the age that he's at. But if you see he's drinking that Celsius, he's a healthy son of a bitch after he eats all of his cake. I think he's unlocked what is it? The fountain of youth, but maybe the fountain of I don't know, old see you next Tuesday or something like that. We'll rename it after him. But look at those crow's feet coming in, dude. Oh my god, look at that. Look at him smiling. I'm really starting to notice a lot about you, Raph.
Coincidentally, Raph and I are only about 6 days apart. It's actually my birthday today.
Yeah, I thought
That's
that was
right.
pretty cool. I thought that was pretty cool. And what is today? It's today Wednesday. Melon, isn't it your birthday today?
It is, yeah. Fifth is
Oh,
me, and 1st of April is Tio.
so you
That's
weren't
right.
gonna tell us. You're gonna hit on Raph, but you weren't gonna tell us it was your birthday today.
Wow. You get smashed all that at work by your mates for it. So I thought I'd sort of keep it on the down low. But I was just going to share that when I came away this week, as I'm doing this, fly in, fly out sort of work at the base, unpack the bags, and Cherry and the kids had snuck a little cake and card and stuff in my bag. It's really touching, So just really nice to get like a handwritten letter from the kids and some cake and stuff, which I'll be eating shortly on a video call. So it's not all bad. It's not all bad.
Well, I'm going to give credit to Cheza for one. I heard about an amazing welcome home things that she does weekly, not just once a month or anything, but weekly, literally welcomes you back like I don't know, like a king or something, which, okay, sure. I think she's got the wrong person, but shout out to Cheza. And also she may have been the one that slipped me the intel on your birthday and said, don't let him get away with anything. So
yeah, she's pretty good. Like I get home from being away and just have such an amazing greeting and walking into a house that's full of music Annie's playing and there's just like a happy smile at the door and smell of amazing food and sit down and get given a nice cold drink. And it's just, honestly, I'm like, what have I done? There's got to be a hammer that's going to fall. There's going to be a bad, and sort of hasn't happened yet. So it's definitely a really nice thing to get home to the family every time. And, everyone's sort of pulling their weight. The kids are pushing on there at 16 and 14 now, working hard in school, and they get that their part, the contribution they're making for the family is that dedicated schoolwork and getting into the homework as early as they can. Michael with his rugby and sport and Annie with her music. And they see mum doing her part, just running an amazing house and nurturing, and obviously see me going out into the world, getting resources for the family and so on. And it just, I don't really know. I'm waiting for the point where these teenagers turn into little horrible people, because it's just not happening for us. You know, it just feels like kids who understand what their role is, you know, what their mission is, and they know that they're moving towards it. And it feels like all 4 members of the team are pulling in the same direction. It's a really happy stage, right? Couldn't be more grateful.
All right, so quick question to open up the episode for both of you. What did you both wish for your birthday, and what was the most memorable thing?
I wish that you'd be off the show permanently. Wait, if I said out loud, is it gonna come to fruition, or did I just jinx myself?
No, you just made yourself an asshole because I was trying to be nice for once, and then that's what you shoot off with, dude. Oh my god. See, this is why, this is why I can't with these guys. Like, I really tried. It's just such a touchy subject. Raph woke up at like what is it out there? Like 4:30, 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. And look at him. Just just how he said that. He basically just said F you, Mike. Like, we all know how to you. Come on, it's an honest question. What was the best day of your birthday, and what are you grateful for?
Well, my actual birthday, I was in San Diego. It's actually kind of a funny story. I was with old Nick Grossi. We linked up. Yeah. He's still linking up with older dudes in the middle of the night just to have dinner, which I still find unusual that he doesn't think that's a flag. But anyways, we linked up, and we met up at this pub, and just, caught up, man. The guy's awesome. And then I don't even know how he knew, but the very next morning, or maybe it was later that night, he sent a text. He's like, "Hey man, why don't you tell me it was your fucking birthday?" And I was like, I don't know. I didn't think it was important. Like, we're just gonna go, break some bread and maybe have a beer or two. But yeah, anyways, he was like, "Dude, you should have told me." I was like, "Why? What difference does it make?" I'm kind of like you. I don't really make a big hoopla about birthdays. Like, it's never been my, I appreciate it, but it's like, if I came home and it was just a regular day, I don't think I'd be offended. I'd be like, whatever.
Yeah. I wouldn't bring it up too if I was old as shit. Let's move over to you there, Melon.
Well, legit getting that card, and because I didn't know I was there until I got to my room, and I'm unpacking and putting a bit of food in the fridge. I was like, what the hell? There's a card, and there's a little envelope with numbers and a lighter and stuff for a cake. And then Michael wrote the bit for him and Annie, which is just really sweet, Obviously, a bit more difficult for Annie to write stuff, but she's the one in the family who's fully mental for birthdays, and she's got the countdown running. She knows the next is it Halloween, Christmas, her birthday. She's got the whole family calendar plotted mentally. And so, those guys just, made such an effort, maybe for $1 million. And then just coincidentally, it's vacation starting this weekend. So to get home and see family will just be a wonderful thing. Share Easter with our family back in country Victoria. We're going to go down to a lake and get the kids sailing and stuff. It's autumn there now, so it's going to be sort of pretty cool and rainy, but it's good family times. So yeah, I'm feeling very blessed, man.
See, now that's how you answer that question, Raph. I hope you took notes, you miserable son of a bitch, because two drastically different answers right there. Just like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then you got Melon's like, I'm going to have family time and beautiful, and everything, and traveling and whatever. And Raph's just miserable. Just, I was with Nick Grossi eating in the middle of the night with beers and didn't give a shit about my birthday. God, you're such an old shit.
I answered the way I did because I know that you're a fucking snake in the grass. People don't know this about you. I do.
It is true.
Oh, man. I love you both. Happy birthday to you both. Pieces of shit.
Thanks, man. And so we've been having birthdays. What's been going on in your part of the world, Mark?
Absolutely nothing. None of your business. Just lots of work, man. Lots of work. I'm very busy now, and I'm gonna be going busy until the fall time. Not a lot of breaks, not a lot of personal time. It's time to dig in and just, the grind has already started for me a couple weeks ago. And like people say, man, it's like I'm in it. There's no throttling or anything. It's like I'm in it. And just trying to balance personal life with this schedule was tough. One of my best friends is getting married this upcoming weekend, and just completely honored to ask me to be his best man. And I don't know how that is. I mean, maybe for women, it's like, oh, I wish I could be like a maid of honor, like this is a big deal. But I don't know. I'll just be honest, man. For me, I always kind of wondered, like, I wonder if I'll ever be someone's best man in a wedding or something like that's an honor, man. And the fact that he asked me to do it, like, I kind of got tears in my eyes because I was like, dude, he's got a brother, he's got other people and whatever, and it's just like you chose me, and he's like, no question. And just to know that, he thinks of me in that light after what, 21 years of being best friends, it's like no greater honor. So I'm going to be heading up this weekend to go to that and be part of it. But, short-lived. I have to leave shortly right after the ceremony and to be back for something for work. So kind of sucks, but I'm also not going to miss that opportunity to be there for him and celebrate with him. So that's probably the biggest thing on the horizon right now that I'm excited for. And, just take a step back and be grateful from all the chaos, dude, that there are good things happening. So it's good.
It is a massive honor to be asked to do that. I agree. I think it's big for women as well. And definitely when you're in that era when your friends and family are getting married and being asked to be someone's best man, and who we asked to be our best man, like, that's a really big deal, I think. And obviously all of his other people must have been sick or out of town and have to fall back and go to fallback position 10, which being you.
Yeah, I didn't have the heart to tell him that he called Mellon and I, and Mellon can't because he's going to Victoria and I can't because I've got to fly. I've got to drive my little cart around the airport. So I mean, we try to let him down as nice as possible because all he said was like fuck, and then he mumbled something about Mike, and then he said fuck, and I was like, I'm sorry, man. I got to drive this cart or else I'd be there.
Let's move on with the topic. All right. I don't need to sit here and take this shit.
Yes, you do, and you're going to like it.
Oh, man. All right, so let's get into the topic here. Last week, we revisited Tender Warrior, and we talked about it's a book by Stu Weber, and basically a book that has really transformed the three of us into better men, into better partners, into better just people in general. And we thought we'd kind of continue this, just into these topics. Not that we don't have other topics we want to talk about, but I think it's very important that, once you hit something as deep as this and important as this, that you stay consistent. So we figured at least 2 straight episodes, maybe talking about these things would be very, very important. The next chapter with this is called Beneath the Breastplate. And it's mainly talking about a man in his heart and kind of his feelings and how things go. Just to initially open this up, there is a huge, massive problem within modern society with the automatic assumption or quick connection that a tender man is a soft man or a snowflake. Absolutely false. And I believe real men know the difference, and people should be able to see the difference between somebody who is tender and somebody who is soft. There's so much blurry lines anymore between definitions and titles and made up names and whatever else you want to get into down that rabbit hole. But when you really truly understand the great qualities of a real man, of a good man, or just as a man or a person in general, I should say. This particularly focuses on men, but things become clearer. Your confidence is very high, and you know who you're supposed to be in what moments. And this in particular, it talks about certain examples, such as General Norman Schwarzkopf, who was the commanding general for Operation Desert Storm in 1991. He was in an interview one time, and he was out there, and one of the people asked him, hey, you're talking about a lot of crazy stuff, and are you scared to cry? And he basically looked back, and he's like, I'd be scared of a man who didn't cry. And that really sets a tone. I mean, coming from a general and lots of time in the military and seen a lot of stuff and been a part of a lot of stuff and commanding troops to their death, it really makes you think, like, who would you want to be around as your father? Who would you want to have around as your partner or a son or a friend or a teammate? It's like, do you want a mindless robot going out and just doing, at sometimes you got to do some terrible things to terrible people. And you have to live with that ultimately. But if you see no reaction, if you see no hesitation, if you see no, post processing of what happened, and someone is just cold and dark, personally, I would be pretty scared of that person, because I don't know what the hell you're thinking. I don't know where your values are. I don't know what you think is right, what's wrong. And, just my personal view, the best men that I serve with in the military, but also just around in my life, are men who are very, very tough, very hard, physically fit, mentally strong, capable of extreme violence, or I've witnessed them give extreme violence to bad people, and then turn around and see them walk in with their daughter or their kids or their wife and just be the most tender individual, kindest, yes, please, thank you, yes, sir, no, sir, hold the door for people, putting others before themselves. And man, if it doesn't just kind of grab you and say, wow, that's a good human being, those are the strongest people. The people I distance myself from, like I said, are the people who are just arrogant, always wielding their power, wielding their experience. Do you know I'm a hard son of a bitch? Like, constantly throwing it out there. It's just like, if you have to tell somebody that you're hard, if you have to tell somebody that you're tough, or what you did, or the extreme violence that you put on somebody, and you have to brag about it, you have a lot of work to do. And, take that as you will. I don't consider myself anything special. I don't think Raph and Mellon really do either, but we've been around a lot of amazing people in positions way farther than ourselves, with a lot more experience. And that is not the way to do it. So I think just introducing the topic that way, maybe we can dive into some personal examples that we have, talk about the difference between being tender and soft, or a snowflake, as some people call them, and why it's important to have that balance in your life in all aspects.
It's such an interesting section in this chapter beneath the breastplate. And I think it's sort of right in the bullseye of what we're aiming to normalize and do with this podcast, which is like sort of regular men talking about stuff that's not really seen in the culture. Like, there's a lot more promotion of like the bravado and trash talking alpha male type behavior in movies, and I feel like that's like what people think people in our lines of work, aviation, like military pilots and SF dudes would be like. And they're never the kinds of people that are going to be leaders or well regarded in our groups either. There's got to be those people who are able to, who've got their really clear reason of what they're doing and why they're doing it. The people who are fierce protectors and defenders, like the wolfhound protecting the flock of sheep from the wolves. And they've got really clear vision on what they're doing and why. And they're able to change gear for the appropriate situation when they're back with the family, back in those other environments. You see it on sporting fields and stuff as well. And I think it's a real problem with teenage boys trying to sort of figure out how they're supposed to act as men. And you can see a lot of really bad examples that are really obvious. And it leads to stuff like gang culture and that sort of toxic male behavior that you hear about, but I think it's normally not really accurately attributed. So, like, I was lucky when I grew up. My dad was really like we're talking, like I was born in the late 70s, so 70s and 80s when I was growing up. My dad was really like the strong disciplinarian in the house, a quiet man, businessman, always dressed in a suit when he'd come home from work. But like if we'd mucked up and our mum said, wait until your father gets home, we really knew that it was serious stuff. Belt would come off, sort of type of thing. But married with that sort of traditional disciplinarian stuff, my dad was really loving. And I think that was very unusual for a man of his era, where there was a lot of affection given to each one of his sons and his daughter. So that I sort of grew up with that really strong male role model, where there was both the ability to be strong and hard when needed, but also really protective and loving. And I think that it's easy to miss one of those two things. And I think this is an element that Stu Weber highlights in this chapter, where you can be he describes it as like trying to emulate feminine love, which has its place. But when there's no strength and capability and determination coupled with that, it can be skewed. And if you're just a hard disciplinarian trash talking without marrying that with the emotional awareness and so on, then also it's imbalanced. So I think this chapter is a really key chapter on like masculine love or emotional awareness in a paternal loving way, where you've got the ability to use either lane of like being the sort of hard and strong, but also the loving and protective. That's sort of what I was getting out of it.
Yeah, that's it's nice that your dad like popped in your head and like he was kind of your example, and one of the biggest examples that I can have come to my mind is for football fans out there, for American football. There's a guy named Troy Polamalu, and he's American Samoan. And Raph, you've met him before, and he is one of the most amazing men I've probably ever met in my life. And I am blessed to call him a friend and have gotten to know him the last 12 years, hanging around the team and just personal connection, and spent time with him at the facility during games, flown out to his house and spent like a week with him and multiple times and done stuff. And the way he speaks and carries himself, and then the way he plays, is undeniable. Every one of his teammates, and I'm not the only guy that know this, anybody that knows American football, or you're a Steelers fan or like whatever, loves Troy Polamalu because of this. He is one of the most dynamic, ferocious people on the field. He's in the Hall of Fame for a reason. But if you listen to him speak and then also watch how he carries himself and his actions, he is one of the most humble, tender men I've ever witnessed in my life. And I know Raph can attest to this. Melon, you were kind of talking about, admitting, whether it's like sport or anything else, but it was, how you should be. And Troy actually sent out a video. This is from a while ago, but it's recirculating. And when he was growing up, he was playing football, and I think this is when he lived in Oregon, and he was out on the field and he had some of his cousins and his family around, and this dude like got up and was like trying his hardest, and Troy was like, I hit him so hard and laid him out, and I stood over him and I was like, and I said, F you, and walked away. And he's like, we got into the car afterwards and we're driving home, and he's like, I was so excited and so proud to tell, my family in the car of man, I lit this guy up. I hit him so hard and I stood over him and I said, F you. And his whole family turned and looked at him and were like, Troy, that's not how you do it, dude. What are you doing? Like, it's a game. And like, what kind of man are you being in this situation? And he's like, I never forgot that. And he's like, if I would have hung on to that, or maybe they would have encouraged me to treat people like that over a game, and not respecting your teammate or having anything, I wouldn't have viewed professional sports the way I do. And this isn't coming from a guy that played 5 minutes of football. This guy was a perennial Pro Bowler, 2-time Super Bowl champion, and currently in the Hall of Fame. Like, this guy backed up every one of his actions and with his words, his entire career. And he is just, he transcends football. He's just an amazing human being. And just to watch him by example, he's a very God-fearing man. He aligns himself with those values and principles of who he's supposed to be as a man. He's a wonderful husband. He's an amazing father. And I watched him with both. And, he's somebody that I try to aspire to be like. I'll never be him, but I truly aspire to be like him because of things like that. And he's open about speaking about it. And that's a huge difference between a lot of men, is nobody wants to talk about being tender because it's automatically viewed as, well, this dude's soft. He's a pussy. He's this, he's that. I don't want him around me. He's a liability. It's like, no, the guy who can come out and speak tenderly about feelings, about hard stuff, about his life, about his love, everything, to me, that is a potentially dangerous, in a good way, man, because that guy has power and control over whatever is given to him, versus the sporadic guy, which we talked about Peterson saying, you want to be the most dangerous man in the room, but know how to control it. And you let that monster out when required, but then you should be tender and kind with women and children. Absolutely. If you can have the power to control that, God, I admire you, because it's the loose cannons. Those are the ones I worry about.
Yeah, I think Troy is probably the best example. I'm actually glad you chose him, Mike. I didn't even think about Troy, but I remember he completely changed my perception. And I'm not saying that all NFL players are like him, but up until that visit where you invited me to go with the team to go visit, with the Steelers. Up until that moment, I literally just assumed all NFL players were about, hooks and blow, and that's how they spent like all their weekends. And Troy was literally one of the first people I ended up meeting and having like a legitimate conversation with, not about football. We just talked about anything. Actually, we mostly talked about surfing. But I noticed that within the first 3 minutes, I had met his wife. I met his 2 sons. I'd met, I think there was another relative that was there. It was like an immediate instant, just like it was so, I think it might've been his mom. Was his mom there by chance, Mike? I remember we were just sitting there talking in the hallway when Pat and those guys gave him a rifle.
Yeah, it was his wife's mom.
Like, yeah, okay. But the point being though is that they were just, the whole family was just an authentically, genuinely just kind, very loving. There was nothing fake about him. So I'll say that about Troy. I'll also say that about his family. And I think if you studied your life enough, you realize that the people that you've noticed that kind of carry these sort of combined, what might seem like polar opposite traits, and then the more you understand it, you start realizing, like, actually, no, it kind of goes hand in hand. Because someone who's strength in itself, like pure strength in itself, usually gives you confidence, right? Because you gain it through, just constant failure, constant just sheer force, constant just putting yourself through the grind. Eventually you come out the other side of that and you realize, like, holy hell, I'm strong. And I'm not talking about just physically strong. I mean, like, mentally strong, all the attributes that come with strength. It's not just physical, but obviously physicality is something that's very obvious and something that society cherishes. Like, I know, and I'm going to go on a segue here. I know that right now we're doing body positivity, and you should totally be a fat body. But the truth is that's just on the surface and no one really means it. We respect you when you're completely in shape because we know that it took real discipline in the gym, in the kitchen, with your sleep, with your daily protocols to get to that physique, right? Like, so don't be fooled by this body positivity bullshit. It's literally the fastest way to the grave. But anyways, like I said, that's a segue. What I was going to say about strength is that it gives you confidence, and that confidence is what allows you to actually kind of show your weakness, or I shouldn't say weakness, but it allows you to be vulnerable, right? And it's completely conversely the other way, where if you're weak, you don't want to show your vulnerability because there's no strength that gives you the confidence to do so. And if you do show vulnerability, then you probably feel, and I'm just assuming because, when I felt like I was a weak individual, I felt like showing my vulnerabilities just made me that much of an easier target for the life at large or the world at large. So I think that's the relationship between strength and confidence and vulnerability, and then vice versa, which is why you see, offline, we were talking about the Nashville shooter or whatever that person's name was.
Yeah.
But clearly that person was weak, right? Clearly. I mean, that person showed all the signs of weakness, like literally all the signs: physical, mental, emotional. I don't know anything about their life. I just know that they're this combination of weaknesses culminated in this horrific event where they killed, three kids and three adults, just for no reason other than they're just weak. They're pieces of shit. And do I blame them? I don't know, man. I don't know their environment. I don't know their upbringing. I'm just saying, like, that is a direct result of that. So I know it's a big discussion right now in our current society about guns and the violence and all this other stuff. But I think it's quick, or at least one side of it really is quick to dismiss the reality of just how weak our society has become and how it's developed this real mental health issue and emotional, like just weak emotional. I don't even know what the term is. IQ, I guess you can say. And we're seeing the results of this, right? High divorce rate, fucking just unsolicited murder of innocent children, like in the dozens. I mean, it all can be traced back to a weak individual.
Yeah.
And so I think that, that's the extreme polars of it. But I think that this chapter, like you say, really does a really good job of marrying, what I think men should strive to be, which is strong and powerful and protectors. And then when you need, like Mike said, come in with immediate level of violence and force to stop any sort of evil going on within your community. But at the same time, use that tenderness to connect. Because at the end of the day, man, it's all about love. Like, let's be honest. Everything we do, like everything you do is to connect with the people you love with, whether it's your friends, whether it's your wife or your husband, whether it's your children, the things that you do every day, whether it's going to the job to get money for the house, for the activities so that your kids can go do it. It's because you love them. You're not going to go and grind through a job just for the sake of grinding through a job because you love money that much. I mean, there are sociopaths like that, but that's a very, 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 very small number. Most of us do the things that we need to do to be around the people that we love and express our love to those people. And we do that by going, hey, I just worked, an extra shift to provide for you guys. That's our language of love sometimes. But anyways, love always comes back to the ability to touch. And I think touch is a big piece. I think that's the part, Mike, that you might be talking about, where it's misconstrued, where it's like, oh, you're soft because you want to show vulnerability. But the truth is, everybody needs to be touched. Everybody, whether it's a hug or a high five or a kiss to your wife or your husband, there's something very powerful in that touch. It's the instant communication of we belong together. We're part of the same, whatever it is, without saying anything.
Yes.
Whether it's a squeeze in the hand, a kiss, a hug. I mean, it's like saying, dude, I'm part of you, you're part of me. And we didn't say a damn word about it. Like, we just know it just through that, that sensation. So anyways, yeah. I think this is a fascinating chapter.
Melon, real quick, I just want to toss it. Everybody raise your hand if you're listening, if you don't like being hugged. if you don't like being appreciated, if you don't like someone holding your hand or telling you it's going to be okay after a bad day, or, you know, something like that. Like everybody's hand should be, you know, should be down. It's like, dude, I love having that. And Raph, you hit it on the point when you said lacking IQ. I think it's lacking emotional IQ, emotional intelligence. That's what's lacking. It's not talked about in society a lot. Everything is you're either hard because you're working out and you're a fucking animal in the gym, or you're a soft snowflake that wanders around and you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings and you want to, you know, you're super passive. There's no in between, but it's literally, you know, emotional IQ is not found in material things. It's not found in the car you drive. It's not found in the money that you have in your bank account. It's not, you know, how, you know, it's just not found in that shit. Emotional IQ is something that really strikes at your heart. And in this chapter, one of the examples, which I can't speak on, you guys know, I hope I do one day. But he talks about, you know, when he was a Green Beret, it's still in the military and all the stuff he went through in Vietnam and everything else, that he came back and he walked into the hospital when his wife gave birth and he looked at a crib and it said Weber on it. And the instant thought in his heart was, this is mine. And for the first time in his life, he said he rested his eyes on something truly of his own with his child. And he talks about how he felt and how he wanted to cry and just felt this emotional attachment he's never felt before. That's not in money. That's not in anything that you can build or whatever. That's something that is so intimate in a connection and a relationship that builds that emotional intelligence that Ralph brought up. And if we're not investing in that type of stuff on that relationship, and the thing that just popped in my head, my grandmother's thing that I have in my place is, the best thing in life are not things. If you're investing in those relationships, in that feeling that Stu is talking about, looking at his kids for the first time, I think we're doing it wrong, you know. And it's just you talked about that kid, man, that shot up the school, and how much lacking of emotional intelligence. Like, those people are so disturbed or are messed up or have mental health issues or emotionally damaged, or they don't even understand themselves, let alone going in and dealing with other people. So they take it out and go rage. That's freaking sad, man. I mean, you can't have rogues like that going around doing what they're doing. But in a sense, man, you feel, I don't know, I feel bad for the person that had to feel like that was their last resort, or that's what they had to do in order to handle it. Because how many more layers did they go through to be denied? How many more layers did they go through to feel like they weren't worth it? You know, it was probably because they got thrown in one of these extreme boxes, left or right, and had no guidance, had no values, had no mentor, had no, hey, this is who you're supposed to be, you know, and how you were created as a man, you know, as a woman. Like, it doesn't matter. And you kind of feel bad, man, in a sense. But sorry, I kind of went off a little bit, Melon. I know you were hopping in there. Go ahead.
All really good points. No joke from both of you guys. Ralph had really good stuff in there where he was talking about true strength gives you true confidence. And in that true confidence from true strength, you're able to be vulnerable, willing to be vulnerable. Whereas someone who doesn't have that strength and confidence will always be trying to paper over and mask and pretend that they don't have these vulnerabilities. They don't have these flaws or weaknesses, and they'll fight to prevent them being exposed and get defensive and lash out and so on when they feel that they are getting seen. When we are willing to be vulnerable with people, like when you think about it, like inside your family with your partner, your wife, your husband, your family, your sisters, brothers, and you, like your own children. I'm thinking about my wife and my kids. If I'm not able to be vulnerable with those guys, there's going to be a really stunted relationship. Like, a true, strong relationship is only going to grow when people are willing to be vulnerable with each other. When you're really willing to open up and let them know what the things are that you're having a hard time with, and where you've struggled and where you've fallen short and what you're doing about it and all that stuff. And especially as a parent, especially as a father, for the children to know you've had hard times and you've struggled with things, because otherwise you can create that situation where there's that implacable sort of strong masculine force in the family, and they don't get any of the difficulty, they don't get any of the struggle, they don't get any of the emotional stuff in the background. So I really feel like Raf has really hit something, the true strength, confidence, ability to be vulnerable. And I think that's what leads to strong relationships. And, I don't know much about this situation you've talked about, but I feel like anyone who'd go and attack children is someone who's emotionally crippled and has had all sorts of issues. And I think you'd probably find a lot of people in those situations, certainly a lot of people who are in prison, have no father in their life. They don't have that fatherly love. It's a strong statistic correlation. Violent offenders a lot of the time don't have that. It's a single parent, and shout out to the single mums, because my mum was on her own and she raised us, and it's a hard situation. But this is what we're talking about here, about men not being men not standing up and doing what they need to do. And part of that is being emotionally available to your family, emotionally available to your children. And that comes from true strength. I have a great friend when my daughter Annie was in the neonatal unit, and, like day 6 or 7, just in total shock and having a terrible time. This other big Aussie guy walked over and just put a newspaper near me and walked off. And it was just like the perfect sort of way to say hello in that situation. No crying, no questions, just left me alone. And then later he and I became really close friends, Mike Safi. And this is another former military guy. He was an armored corps guy, getting around in APCs back in the day, and then into first aid and ambulance and mine safety and mining in Western Australia. And he really had this strong thing about his children were not going to miss out on anything. So he's a great provider, really a great man, going in, fly out, working the mines and really working hard to bring back great resources for his family. But that wasn't the only thing. He was like, my children will not miss out on anything, including all of the emotional support. And so he was a very, very loving father, a very big, immense pillar of physical strength, and then all these sort of admirable qualities around getting resources and great work ethic. But he had this real great balance about, you don't want to be the one who's away all the time and not there for the kids. So he was really just a great example of these two parts that come. And so I think Raf has hit it on the head. True strength gives confidence, the ability to be vulnerable, and that leads to strong relationships. And you're not going to have those strong relationships, the things that are really going to steer people through hard times, if you're trying to pretend and you're not willing to do that work. And strong men and strong women are not just financial providers or whatever. They're providing all of that physical element of life, the necessities of resources, but they're also providing emotionally. So there's two parts for all of us to work on, I think.
Great points, Melon. There is something in there that I'd like to say is, during that time with Melon and his daughter in the neonatal unit, Melon was a Air Force officer and he wore a uniform. And if you haven't seen his picture of him standing over Annie's crib in it, and then also he just explained a story about the guy that came up and handed him a newspaper silently. There was a silent connection of saying hello and having emotional connection without saying a word. That's very important. And when you sit there and think about life and what or I should say society really puts a spin on about people in positions or what they do, it's not who you are. How many of us that have played sports have witnessed something or had a conversation or, some type of situation where you look at a teammate and you don't have to say anything, but you look and you're like, that's my guy. Like, no question, like, oh, I love that guy because of something he did, his action, the way he made you feel, like whatever. It's like a best friend feeling, right? It's just like you're proud to have that guy on your team for some random reason versus just him knocking somebody out or making a play. But it's something in between the whistles, as they say, is just like that guy is special. And that's an emotional connection, right? And they wear uniforms. You wear uniforms on a sports team. You wear uniforms in the military. You have all this stuff. The big problem that I always feel is because you wear a uniform and you're supposed to be identified as a certain character because of that uniform is completely wrong. Like there's a quote that I've heard since I was a teenager. And, I used to think it was kind of corny. Like, I'm not going to lie. It was kind of like, oh, whatever. Time has proven it wise because of, you pay attention to it and it shows its true colors. And the quote is, the uniform doesn't make the man makes the uniform. And really think about that. It's not like any of us join the military and put on a uniform or a sports team or anything and we're instantly good. Like sprinkle the magic fairy dust over and it's like, oh, you're this amazing person now. You have these great qualities. You're a great teammate. You're a great man. You're a great father. You're a great husband. You're whatever. I've never met one person that does that. I've met a lot of people who think that's how it goes and then they emulate that and then, strictly just fall on their face. And how do I know that? Because I was partly that guy once too. That's how I know. So really thinking about that, the uniform, right? You can think about military units, sports teams, doctors, all these crazy positions that people hold on a high pedestal. You don't get there by accident, but also you don't stay there by accident either. The really good people that you wholeheartedly trust demonstrate a lot of emotional intelligence and tenderness. If they ruled by a fist and lived like a dictator and no human connection, you're probably not going to want to spend any time with that person more than you have to. You're not going to trust them with your life. You're not going to trust them to fix you. You're not going to trust them with your children or anything that's near and dear to you. Really makes you think about what we put in priority as far as society. Like for myself, and I know for you guys too, doing what you guys do as pilots, we always poke fun at each other. Like, oh, you're a pilot and we have standards and, this, that, whatever. And it's fun. But at the same time, if you're a pilot and you're an asshole, no one cares. If you do what I do and you're an asshole, no one cares. If you're a doctor and you have 6 degrees and all these fellowships and all this other stuff and blah, 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 but you're an asshole, nobody cares. It's what's in your breastplate. As Stu says, it's what's in your breastplate that really magnifies that uniform. It's the character and it's the values that you bring. And, all that is metal and cloth. That's all that is. It was manufactured and it says, hey, this is a uniform for this type of job, but it's the person who makes the job. Right. And we get that so confused of, if you achieve and you become this, then you've made it and you have nothing else to prove to anybody. Bullshit. You have to prove it every single day that you belong in that uniform, that you belong in that community, that you belong in that circle every single day. And it's not just because I work out and I look good. It's not just because, I said one nice thing today, so I'm good. No, it's that reevaluation of yourself, who you are, what you're doing, what your purpose is, how are you handling pain, how you're handling success, how do others feel around you, how do you feel around others, and you should be going to bed every night asking yourself those questions for maybe 5 minutes. I'm not asking you to write a journal every night, but 5 minutes, be like, did I do it right today? What could I have done better? Are the people around me better or are they worse off because of me? And that's all about what's beneath the breastplate, not about what you woke up and put on to go to work today.
There's a lot in what Stu Weber, he chose the title of this book very carefully. And we're talking, I know this has been described in previous episodes, but he was a Vietnam era Navy SEAL. He went on to become a pastor and a leader in his community and has written this amazing book with a massive background of military service, combat, and then also just life experience and making a difference in his community. So he has really seen a lot of stuff here. And he's chosen the 2 words tender and worrying, put them together. And I've not ever heard those 2 things. It's like Raph was saying before, it sounds like they're opposites until you get down and you understand what he's talking about. So he's talking, when he's chosen these 2 words, about, he didn't use the word soft, like Mike has highlighted here. He really contrast the word tender with soft. Soft being something that's malleable and will change shape, whereas tender is something that's able to reveal affection in someone else. And that's mated with the word warrior, which is obviously someone who's fierce and able to fight for something. And when you think about how those two words match and what meaning and purpose and principles a person who's living a life like that, this chapter is really key, where it's talking about all of the reasons that you're going to be the warrior for Stu. They're all coming back to some emotional, some heartfelt connection. He's defending something. He's not out like a mercenary out in the field, you know, killing people. He's not running around like a character in Call of Duty, shooting anything that moves. He's driven and motivated by a desire to protect, you know, family, children, community, way of life. When he was doing his military service, and he went back and continued to serve that as a pastor, and that's how those two things marry up. So in this chapter, he's talking about that ability to connect with your emotions underneath, and that is something that healthy men should be doing. It's not something you should not be pushing these things down or repressing your feelings. You should be examining your feelings, examining your childhood, trying to figure out if you're having behaviors that are not productive and helpful at home, with a family, in a relationship, at work, wherever it may be. You should be trying to get to the root of what has caused this, and can you resolve it and deal with it and express yourself in a different way. So I reckon that this chapter is one of the key chapters for the whole book, where it's involving that emotional awareness and the reason why Stu is out in the world in this fierce role as a warrior. He's not just a warrior, he's a tender warrior, and he's not soft. One thing that I just wanted to raise here, there's a tie-in, a lot of this stuff ties in really well with Jordan Peterson and a lot of the way he looks at the world and he expresses himself. And in his current new book, the 12 More Rules for Life, there's one in there that sort of, I thought, matched what we're talking about tonight, and it's the 10th one, which is plan and work diligently to maintain the romance in your relationship. And I really see that as like a really wonderful value for men and women both to be working towards. And I think that ties in here, that it contains in that rule that you're not just going to have the spark of having just met someone and that, you know, joy and uplift that you feel when you're just dating and you're trying to figure out if they're the one. That's not going to sustain itself over 20, 30, 40 years. That's going to take effort, and it's going to take the kind of effort you're making in the beginning, but then you sort of can back off, and, you know, everyone can fill on down over time, and making it a point and a principle to apply in your life where you are you are working diligently to maintain the romance. I think that ties well with this Beneath the Breastplate chapter by Stu Weber, where Jordan Peterson is highlighting that without this hard work, things will just drop off and you can just end up being companions, or there's a reason why this relationship is different from all of your other friendships. And romance is a key part of it. And so this is something that men should be doing. This is not a womanly thing only. The guy should be making that effort and planning date nights and trying to remember why it was that you initially had this relationship begin, you know, why. For me, it's really a key thing in a family, you know, mum and dad. The love between mum and dad is the whole foundation that the family is built on. If mum and dad are in love with each other and best friends, then I think everything else in the whole family is going to be fine. And it can be easy with parents, especially with small kids, to like, I must focus on the kids, and you can lose that time. And so if you don't plan it, it won't happen. And I think that the rest of your family life will flourish when that parental love and relationship is alive. So I thought that was just a bit of a tie-in on the side.
That's a beautiful tie-in. I mean, that's literally probably the pillar of the family right there, of like having a husband and wife being able to maintain all of that. And the first thing I'm thinking about is at the beginning of this episode when you're talking about Cheza welcoming you home after being gone for a few days, and like coming home to that type of warm household with family and your birthday and like everything else. Like, I know you're a 6'4" softy, you know what I mean? Like, you come home, dude, and you go from work and leaving that side, and I really mean it. You can turn it off, and you come home, and you're dad. You're a husband and your dad as soon as you come home. And I hear the way you speak about it, like when you come home and you're like paying attention to every detail, like, oh, she made two big meals, and I had this, and the floor was clean, and I noticed this, and the kids wrote me a letter, and this and that, whatever. Like, you pay attention, man. And that doesn't come from, hey, I'm Melon, this giant pilot, see you next Tuesday, that's out there telling students what to do and blah blah blah. Like, they don't care. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like Obs always says, the RAF, like, nobody cares that you're a pilot, RAF. Nobody cares, you know? Like, what they care about is who is the man that comes home to them. You know, they probably shouldn't have married you because you're a pilot or because you're successful at a job. It's because of the man that you are. And if you probably ask any woman, like, would you rather have somebody that's extremely wealthy and dishonest and just a piece of shit, or would you have, you know, a man that has little to no money, but he's faithful, he's honest, he's emotional with you, he loves and cares for you, he's on, you know, all these different things. I would say mature women. I don't want to say bad women because maybe it's just they haven't realized it yet, but I would say a good mature woman knows what is really worthy, and she would rather take the guy with no, you know, with little to no money, and build from there and go up, because that base is going to be strong versus somebody that's just wielding, look at my money and power, and I can have whatever I want, and you're expendable, and I don't need to give you my time or energy, and blah blah blah, and go down the list. It's pretty clear, you know, and I know it's clear for me and like who I'm trying to be and my journey and reading this book and everything. So great points. And yeah, I just want to give you both kudos, because you guys truly demonstrate it, and you tell me about it. You're not ashamed of it, even when you fail. But I know that you're trying, and man, that goes a long way. So
That's another one I think that's a great point, Mike, is being able to talk about your failures. And that ties into Brad's earlier point about vulnerability, which is only possible when there's genuine strength. Being able to talk to my kids about times when I've let myself down and not been my best has, like, I know that has given me an access to communicate and connect with them. And it's not an easy thing to think about doing, but it's like, and you know, I'm sure there are people out there. There are some people out there, amazing people, maybe who've not done this, but behaving badly and having your kids see it, like a tender warrior, a strong mother or father or parent will be the one who brings that up and addresses that, and lets the kids know that they're safe, that mum or dad was having a bad time, a bad day. Give enough detail, not too much, you know, just let them know that there's reasons that you're sometimes not always in a great mood, but then really own it, and don't leave it to the children to have to guess or wonder or interpret that on their own. And in that, being vulnerable with them, you know, you can commit again, you can apologize to your own children. I think there's a real gift for the whole family when the parents are able to do that, and there's a transformation of the relationship, certainly as they get older. Like, it doesn't have to be detailed when they're little, just simple, the same sort of thing you'd want them to do. But that ability to own when you've made a mistake to your own children is, I think, really aligned with what Stu Weber is talking about in this chapter, that you are, you know, fessing up and owning it, not leaving the responsibility on the kids, and you're able to then create something new and move forward. And I think that gives them a sense of, like, their foundations are strong again. They're not worried about the world moving underneath their feet. And hopefully you're not mucking up every day, right? Like, you're delivering on your word, like we said last week. You're delivering on your commitments that you've made. And if this is a repeated issue for you, then you should be reaching out and getting help to address them. But yeah, really great point, Mike.
thanks, Melon. Thanks for showing your tender side and giving me credit after Raph belittled me at the beginning of the show. I really appreciate it.
Well,
We should probably wrap up. I know Mike's got.
Yeah, we've got a hard out here, guys. We've got super early. It was a super early start for Raph. There's lots of stuff going on, but a great episode on Beneath Breastplate. Next chapter in Stu Weber's American book, Tender Warrior. Were there any final thoughts or points that you hadn't brought up yet that you'd like to leave the listeners with there, Raph? Is there anything that hasn't come across you just want to drop here before we complete?
No, I would just encourage anybody listening, man or woman, to read this book. I mean, honestly, I think it's hands down one of the best books, if not the best book that I've ever read. Like it's transformed what I've thought about achieving in life and how I kind of see myself and my duties. And I mean, clearly I'm nowhere close, but it's something to aim for. And I think that if more of us did this, I think we just could make this place better, and keeping it from going off the rails is currently feeling.
Right. How about you then, Mike? Is there any final thoughts or words that you wanted just before we close here?
Yeah, I want to borrow some of Stu's questions. I always say at the end of each chapter, he really asks some deep questions, and you're gonna get uncomfortable with some of these things. But the first question is: think of the men you know best. Is it hard for them to express or discuss their feelings, and why? Like, really do an evaluation of that and the people around you in your circle, personally, professionally. And ask yourself, like, why do these people do that, or do they not do it? And then ask yourself why. And then maybe ask them why. Get to know them, really get to know them. Not the outside cloth and the medals or pins or whatever that's on the outside, but really get to know them. Two is, he mentions General Schwarzkopf said he was afraid of a man who won't cry. Think about that in your life. Are you one of them? Are you afraid to cry? Ask yourself, what do you suppose the general meant? Do you agree with it? Why or why not? Really explore what the bad things are about, crying about something terrible or holding it in, and really think about that. And then the last question that I really like, think of the tender warriors you have known. What did they all have in common? How were they different? How would you like to emulate them? And off the top of my head, just for me, the tender warriors that I know, majority of them, not all of them, but majority, have all come from the military, have seen some really bad shit, really hard experiences overseas, experienced massive amount of pain because of loss, injury, whatever. And it has morphed them into amazingly humble, tender warriors. My great uncle Bobby I spoke about was one of them, and he was a POW as a Marine in Korea for 11 months. And he was one of the most tender people who would sit out on the porch and whistle to his wife, my great aunt Dot, when she got dementia. And he would sit out and sing songs to her and whistle to her on the porch every night and making her a cup of tea. And he didn't want to be anywhere else until she passed away. I don't give a shit what anybody says. My great uncle Bobby was a tender warrior, and hard as nails too. So that's who comes to mind instantly when I think about it. So for me, that's what I have in common, is massive amounts of pain and understanding of loss and life. And but they've taken the time to develop what really, really matters. And he was a great example of that. So ask yourself these questions, write them down, do an evaluation, think about where you fit in, who you want to be like. And I guarantee you're going to make some changes, because I know the three of us have.
Great stuff. Well, thank you all very much for your time. We always appreciate it. We love a review and a rating. 5 stars, good stars. If it's less than that, email us and let us know what you'd like us to improve, other than eliminating Mike from the podcast, which we try again. It's not working. But until next week, guys, take care, and we'll see you then.